Hello, everyone. Welcome to Women Seeking Wholeness Wednesday. I am Cherie Burton. This is a podcast for those who long to feel, express, and be who they truly are. This episode actually is really tender for me. Sometimes you'll have a conversation with someone and you were already kind of sensitive before you were talking to them, and then something they said you just keep ruminating on or contemplating, and then it just starts to grow in you and you can feel things opening and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm about to shift something, or I'm about to blow, or you're just feeling this tension. And for me, that happened very shortly, within about 12 or so hours after I wrapped this discussion with Wendy up. I started to dive into a part of my past I had buried. It started with watching the video. Actually, she and I watched it together right before we started doing our interview. I'll have links to the show notes of where you can watch the video. It was about her sexual trauma story. It was so well done and so well acted, and it's a very short video. It's like under 7 minutes. But I was already kind of feeling some emotion bubble up from it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't cry right now because I have to interview her. So right after we watched her video together, which again, the link to that is in the show notes, we interviewed and she shared her story. And then I went on with my life and I did the mom thing and did stuff for my business. And the next day I felt that swelling of like, you got to stop because you got to address this. So I did. I was on the floor actually in my bathroom with my husband helping, and I was able to illuminate some things that I hadn't addressed yet with my own sexual trauma. Just one isolated instance in my teen years. I didn't realize how deeply to the core of my being it had affected me until Wendy helped to open that up unknowingly, just by watching the video and talking to her. On September 11th at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, she is having this free gathering online. She's starting to spark a lot of movement and change to heal. As you guys know, when the Me Too movement came out, it opened Pandora's box, but it was just kind of about awareness. And now people need to come back and heal. And that is what she is starting. It's a time to heal. #time, the number 2, heal. You can watch her video if you want to do that first and then listen to our interview or watch her interview on YouTube. All those links are in the show notes. She is really starting something special. She's a writer, speaker, podcast host. She's a transformational advocate. She's just got this really, really intensely amazing, traumatic story to share, and her healing through that. And she's being very vulnerable. And that's what we need right now, is we need that vulnerability from people who are in the trenches with us, helping us through our healing crises. And that is the name of today's episode, When You Hit a Healing Crisis. Trauma can block you from receiving what you want and deserve in this lifetime. We're going to dive into how trauma impacts the nervous system, what it means to be shedding trauma, the mixed messages and the misunderstandings of when someone's in a trauma pattern versus when they're just in normal stress, and then just coming back into the belief that you are more than what has happened to you in the past. I hope you join us on September 11th. If this is something you feel called to do, it's totally free. You just hop on, go to the link. Again, that's in the show notes for this episode. It's going to be a really special time for a lot of women to come together and just put that out there that we're all healing and it's time to heal. You have a body, and so healing is first and foremost physical. It begins with grounding and regulating your body's nervous system, addressing your physiology, coming out and saying hello to your neuroreceptors so that you can receive more light, so the light gets into those broken places. A little bit longer of an intro on this episode than I typically do, but I want you all to know how important it is that when we hear words, they can spark something in us. They can move us into the next level of our healing. And I would venture to assume most of you that are attracted to my show are in some kind of a transition. You're feeling something move within you. You know that you're in a place where you're really vulnerable and that it's time to heal. So I hope you do enjoy this episode and continue to follow me on Instagram, Cherie.Burton, where we open up into fuller discussions and posts and engagement on these topics. Also, ask to join our Women Seeking Wholeness private Facebook group. Now to my discussion with my brave and brilliant friend, Wendy Bunnell. Wendy, my friend. We were just talking before we recorded, and you were one of the first guests that I had on this podcast show. This would have been 2019, the year of my undoing. Year I turned 50. But yeah, it's like we were just talking about what's happened the last 3.5 years and how, we've kind of walked this journey of really stepping into our trauma that we didn't know we were carrying. Even 3 years ago when we started talking to each other.
Yeah, it is so funny, Cherie, because I look past and, I had grown a lot by that point, and I had unlayered a lot of the programming and the things that were impacting my life. I was starting to discover gratitude. I was starting to discover my connection. But to see where I was in 2019 and to see where I am now is so radically different. And I would expect it to continue because that's what we do in this life, right? We dismantle, we deprogram, we declutter, and we become different versions of ourselves all the time. Yeah. And so it's funny to revisit the story that was originally shared and how radically different it is than going to be for today's podcast.
Yes, because we connected on something else. Well, we did an interfaith. You invited me to be speaker at the interfaith thing that you were hosting back then. And then we did the podcast interview. And now you and I both have had, very introspective, deep, psychic, deep programming and conditioning journeys, paralleling, like not really taking notes. But then I sort of saw your metamorphosis on Facebook and I'm like, I really resonate with what she's saying. And then we reconnected. And anyway, so it's been fun to have you back in my life and to see your healing and just the beauty coming out, oozing out really of just your radiance. That's just, you've always been amazing and beautiful, but now it's just like, here I am, world. And the joy is coming out. So, yeah. Okay. The reason I wanted you to be on this podcast and at this time is we'll tell people what you're doing and the movement you're creating. But I want to start with your story because I was so touched. I mean, I knew a little bit about your history and the trauma, but I think with you being more transparent now about it and how you really hit a crisis point, as all the hero's journey people do, and you went into the descent. And you found something super precious. And now you just are so alive in that and what you discovered. So take us through that arc, take us through that heroine's journey. And let's start with your story. And this is just a little bit maybe of a trigger warning for people who may have gone through varying forms of abuse, especially sexual abuse or sexual assault. This could be a little triggering. So just a little warning there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that disclaimer because, I think if we can get ourselves braced up a little bit and going, okay, well, I'm going to listen to this but I can be in my body while I listen to this. It's really important. So thank you
anchoring that safe. Yes, that anchor and that safety. Yeah. I would say, even as that's coming out of me as a trigger warning, I don't want to make it a self-fulfilling prophecy because even if you have been in those circumstances, this is what you want to listen to because it's going to give you hope. And that said, like you said, anchoring into the body and just letting that be your safe hold and letting our presence, you and I together, being that safety for you.
Yes. And even though this is, an emotional ride we're going to take you on today, I do believe at the end, you're going to feel such incredible hope and an encouragement to get to the next healing place in your life. So, really, my story begins at the very beginning with my own sexual trauma. I was raped as a 15-year-old virgin. And I was also very, very much involved in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saint culture. So in my perspective and in my story, that meant that I was lick donut now, right? Like I was no longer eligible or really feeling comfortable dating returned missionaries and, feeling like I was following the recipe right. So that leads me to 17. And by that time now, I'm really heavily drinking. I'm doing a lot of partying as a teenager, like a lot of teenagers do. And I found myself...
But Latter-day Saint culture is not in line with that either, because that's a whole other level of shame to take on, right?
Nope. And I almost believe I went down that road because I just couldn't even consider what happened at 15. It was so traumatic. And then at 17, I have another opportunity to experience this. And I have a gang rape at 17 at a party. And honestly, in my brain, because we move through this, like we keep going forward. I'm a fighter. Everybody's a fighter. We figure it out. We figure this life out. So I move forward. And I get married, I go to college, I have children, I'm doing all the things that life tells you that if you do these things, you will be happy, you will be safe, you will feel good, you will think that you will live up to the measure of your creation. Just do these things and you're going to be okay. And so I did those things. And yet, about 5 years ago, I really believe I was on a place where I was starting to like myself a little bit more, and I was starting to shed some of that trauma. And I believe my body finally said, sis, you're ready. You're ready. And that's when the breakdown happened before the breakthrough. About 5 years ago, I went on this incredible health journey. I used to call it a health crisis. Now it's a health journey, because my body was trying to help me understand what was happening. And because I wouldn't wail and scream over what had happened, my body was doing it for me. It was doing it for me. It was allowing me to have the opportunities to wail and scream and to allow that stuck energy, that stuck trauma to finally find a way to the surface and be able to be released. Because where I was going, the emotional baggage of yesterday wasn't going with me. There's no way. I kept asking to be the best version of myself. I wanted to get to the next level. I wanted to go up to the next place. And I couldn't go there with that with me. And my soul knew it. My soul knew it. And so I had this opportunity to get real. And I remember during those years, I mean, just very quickly, I'll touch on the things that I was experiencing. So your listeners know kind of where I was at. I had vertigo, brain fog, tinnitus, Hashimoto's, fibromyalgia, cystitis, leaky gut, SIBO, chronic UTIs, insomnia. I could never sleep, never, ever, ever, ever sleep.
It's so interesting. I'm just going to pause there for a second, because all of those ailments that you listed are pervasive. I mean, not all in one person necessarily like you, but pervasive, like plague-like of our times. Mm-hmm. And the energy of emotion that lives, the ancestral, implications, aside from trauma, like your earth, like time trauma. Mm-hmm. Don't you agree that there's this resurgence of these ailments, that mystery illnesses oftentimes, but that laundry list you just gave is amazing, that it was all showing up in you. It's almost like, well, do you want to feel it all?
Yeah. And you know what? I laugh because even when I work with people who are very intuitive on energy and spirituality, they're like, even your spirit goes really fast. It goes really fast. And so I'm like, yeah, I can see I have one speed and it's full blast ahead. And although I have learned the absolute beauty in the moment and in peace. So I say that when I switch into, I know now how to stay in feminine energy, but when I use my masculine to get things done, man, it's efficient. My masculine does a great job. I just can't stay in that, or otherwise I have all those autoimmune things that are happening.
Yeah.
So
same.
yeah. So with that being said, here I am. I remember one night, I'll give you a little glimpse of how awful I felt. I couldn't sleep once again. And my body was like, you got to run. You have to run, the fight and flight response. And I'm like, it's 2:00 in the morning. Where am I going to run? I'm going to get pulled over by a cop. It's unsafe to run. So the thought was, go in your backyard. And really, honestly, I think I needed to touch the earth with my feet. Now that I think about it, I needed some grounding, and I didn't recognize that that's what I was needing. But I went back there and I ran 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 until my lungs wouldn't support me anymore. And I collapsed on a heap. I'm looking up at this night sky, June night sky, and I'm thinking, I am living a nightmare I cannot wake up from. It was that bad. It was that bad. I have such reverence for that moment, because those are the moments that you will do anything. You will do anything to end it. I'm so grateful, because I would not be here had I not gotten to the level of hell that I was experiencing to try and seek for the light again. And my soul and my spirit knew that that's where I was going. So that set me on this course of, you know what? Doctors can't provide me answers. It's mystery. It really was energetic. That's what it was. It was spiritual. It was energetic. It was emotional, and I was feeling it physically. And so really nothing could take the edge off of it. So I just got to feel. And so I started to use lots of different modalities I'd never, ever experienced before that would start to slough off the little bit of the layers, little by little by little. Each of them, I think, was necessary. And some of them didn't work at all. And that was okay. I think I probably invested more than several six figures of income to figure out what the heck was going on with me. And I'm really grateful for each one of them. But a lot of the things that helped me the most were the ones that have been around forever and ever and ever. And, acupressure, acupuncture, massage, yoga, unifying body, mind, and soul connection, learning meditation. But I started learning Kundalini yoga because that helped me learn meditation. I had to get my nervous system was fried. Yeah. And a lot of what I was experiencing was serious adrenal fatigue. And my nervous system was absolutely always in the parasympathetic nervous system. So as a result, I'm feeling all of these things. So I go through all these modalities. I'm learning little by little how to slough things off. I'm starting to feel like I have some normality in my life. And then I discover the power of sound healing and vibration. And actually, oddly enough, at your retreat, my very first experience with sound healing was a sound bowl experience. Mm-hmm. And honestly, it was so funny. I was in that room and my system was like, run, get out of here, run. And I was like, we just had a discussion about the buffalo and going into the storm. And I kept seeing the buffalo in my head going into the storm. I'm going to go into that storm. And
you weren't ready though. It was not time. You hadn't created the inner safety because your nervous system wasn't regulated. So it was just like, it's not safe.
Exactly.
Go.
I had to be in my body. I had to get safe and I had to help my nervous system regulate. So that took some time. That took lots of different modalities, lots of things that helped. And so I get to that place, right? And January 1st of 2021, I'm sitting in a bathtub rather than the normal festivities that I normally go to. And usually by this time, I've had this huge vision board of and to-do list of all the things that I'm going to accomplish in the next year and a word. And I'm sitting in the bath going, God, I don't want to do it this year. I love 2020, the COVID, not doing anything, just being I really love it. Can I go back to that time? And the thought was, well, you don't have to do anything. Why don't you just be this year? I was like, just be this year? Oh, that sounds fabulous. I want to just be. And the thought was, why don't you just fill your soul up this year? Just rather than putting it out there this year, just fill it up and be. Just listen to me and I'll show you where to go. So fast forward 2 months later, and I'm a friend of this fiery redhead that is always involved in drums. And I've always been like attracted to drums, but never really known why. And she was having a retreat. And I thought, I need to be at that retreat. That is for me, which was unusual because usually when I go to a retreat, I am asked to do something for that retreat. So I don't usually pay for retreats. I'm usually invited to retreats. So, in this one, so it was like, it took a conscious effort of, okay, hit the press button. I'm signed up. I'm going. And I'm going to be there and I'm just going to receive. I'm not giving anything out to anybody else. I'm just receiving. And so I went to this retreat, and the first day, we did a couple of drum ceremonies, not drum circles, ceremonies, very intentional, bringing to the surface things that need to be released through trauma. And I thought I'd gone to a retreat for a week. I had done EMDR by that time. I had done a lot of healing modalities, and I thought that chapter of my life was over. And so I started to feel the things loosen up in my system. And I started to know that's the road I was going to go down. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me? When is this over? Like, when the hell is this over? And the next day we were in a drum ceremony, and I can't even put into words the out-of-body experience that I had. But let's just suffice it to say, I found myself on the floor, surrounded by 20 women who were embracing me. One that had my head on her lap, and she was humming in my ear. She was just humming softly in my ear. And then the facilitator out in front of me with crystals saying, she had no idea what my story was. I didn't share this story with anybody. And here she was down, knowing exactly where the trauma was coming out. And she helped me navigate and cut the energetic cords of that story of those boys. I believe the energy of those boys were still within me. And it was time to just literally cut the cords. And that's, I believe, what happened. And it was my version of heaven. Women coming together and helping each other and loving each other and linking arms. That's what we were designed to do. So feminine energy, when we are truly in that beautiful, divine feminine place, we are there with each other. We are unified. We are loving and nurturing and kind and powerful and using our spiritual gifts. And that's what every person in that circle was doing. So I want to say, like, that is, for me, is the wave of the future. I was on the receiving end during my trauma in 2019, mid 19 or 18, I can't remember, where 12 women held a circle for me. And it was very similar to what you're saying. There was there were women at my head and my feet and touching my heart, and each of them brought an offering for me. Like, one woman did a traditional Hawaiian dance for Mother, and another one brought a rock from the Sea of Galilee, and another woman had a poem, and it was just, I'm like, I cannot wait to pay this forward. Yeah, it was so, and I am like you, like, I'm either in charge of stuff or I'm there to learn, and to have an embodied, like, I'm just here to receive, while I'm falling apart, basically, was so powerful. So anyway, continues their story, but I just want to say that somebody needs to organize. I know that these circles happen a lot. Yes. But we need to midwife each other through these and have these for women that are in an acute life crisis or faith crisis or transition or move or death or divorce or any kind of life transition where she's just
like you were, right? Just it's coming up and I don't know what's happening and I don't know who to ask. But how beautiful that this lined up for you like that.
It was. I mean, I really feel like the one thing that was going for me is that I knew there was purpose in the pain. Through the whole thing, I knew in my heart that this would end eventually. This wasn't going to be my story. It was too much. I was not going to allow this to be my story forever. This could be a part of my story now, but not forever. So here I was in this cuddle, and I go home. And 2 weeks later, I wake up in the middle of the night and I feel this stirring, this pulsing in my sexual center that I'd never felt before. You need to know I'm 52 years old right now. This was when I was 50 years old, almost 51, like a month before. I've been married for 32 years by then. And here I am feeling something I've never felt before. It's not like I didn't love sex. It just, I'd never felt that. And so I make the decision. A week later, my husband's going out of town on a fishing trip. Nobody's going to be at my home. And I decide I would take myself on a date and finally explore my body like I'd never allowed myself to before. I was always told that that wasn't appropriate, that wasn't acceptable, that wasn't, that you were venturing out into a very, very,
self-abuse. It's actually, I've actually heard it called self-abuse.
Yes. And that's, Cherie, it was everything but self-abuse. Talk about showing up for myself. Talk about loving myself. I had never even looked at my body before. I didn't even know what that looked like. I mean, because hell, I wasn't going to look at that, right? That wasn't for me. That was for everybody else. That's what I was told. I mean, even the very fact of sexual trauma was my body is for your pleasure. It's not for my pleasure. It's not for me. And that's what we're told. And it's like, where did this come from? Someone that was very powerful knew what it would do to us, knew what it would do to our power for us, right? Like, I really feel like this was very deliberate for centuries. And that night, I experienced my very first orgasm as a 50-year-old woman. As a 50-year-old woman. And it wasn't just a physical orgasm. It was a very spiritual, connected, aligned, the energy going up and then back down. And in that moment, I've never felt God like I have in my life. I've never felt so aligned with source energy. And that was the piece that astounded me. I was like, you mean to tell me that this was keeping me away from aligning fully with God like this? And it all makes sense. It all makes sense why this is exploited in the world. It all makes sense while the powers at work have tried to cut us away from that sexual source, that source of energy, that source of light, because as women, that's where we create, right? We are creative beings. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And we find joy and bliss and pleasure. And we actually can be the best versions of ourselves when we can learn to have pleasure again. And pleasure doesn't need to be from sex. Pleasure can be from everyday monotonous things. I can find pleasure in washing dishes. I can find pleasure in washing my hair. You know what I mean? Like, I can find pleasure in those things. And it was like a piece of me returned. I literally feel like the light turned on. It was amazing. So I want that for my sisters, because I can tell you right now, there are someone out there, maybe many, that are saying, well, have I had an orgasm before? And if you're asking yourself that question,
you haven't.
My suggestion, you haven't. And what a beautiful thing that you can experience now, because awareness is where it starts, right? Mm-hmm. Understanding that you haven't, and now being able to understand that you, my dear, dear sister, have some special, wonderful gift you get to unpack. And a lot of times that is removing the layer of trauma between you and experiencing that. And that was my story. My story was I had to get past the trauma that was blocking my heart for me to finally receive love, receive alignment, receive all the things that were in store for me. And that is the beautiful gift of being courageous and brave enough to look the monster in the eye and decide that that's no longer going to be your story.
And more than that, it's not just about the bravery. It's like you said, it's the surrender. Because when you were in that circle of women, you had to make a choice to let go.
Yeah.
And that is sensuality.
Yes.
Like you were saying, the pleasure that we derive from mundane tasks, or it's all about presencing in the body. And it's those bottom chakras, the root chakra and the sacral chakra, which is very feminine. It's Mother Earth. It's primal. It's creation. It's the base of the Kundalini energy. And what I love about what you're sharing is that it's the intention that you come in. If you're coming into a situation of intimacy, whether it's a partner, yourself, whatever, there's a lot of shame with self-intimacy. And we'll get to that because you brought it up and I have some fire with it. We just did a podcast episode called Your Sexuality is for You. And I had probably more personal messages from that podcast episode than anyone that I've ever done. But the intentionality that you come in with when you are going to be vulnerable and experience intimacy is, it's like, what are you letting in? What are you surrendering to? And if you are surrendering to your divine center, to your own divine soul, that's a whole different experience than an energy exchange of two unconscious people or your own unconscious self. And that, I love what you're saying about the energy was falling and rising, because that flow of the Shakti, and that divine feminine flow that just comes up and it comes down, and it's going up the chakras and down. And it's like, I am here now.
Yeah.
I am the bridge between heaven and earth. Yes. And so we need to I'm with you. Like, we just need to reframe the whole deal around sexuality. That is how we got to the place we are now, is the shaming of the feminine body, sexuality, giving of life. That is so powerful that it was such a threat to the powers that be in the patriarchy that wars were fought. If you look at the earliest goddess history, the original temples and the earliest artifacts that we've been able to find on this earth, it's all a full-bodied goddess. There's a lot of pictures of, the yoni or carvings. And it's just like, that was the center of it all. And it wasn't paganistic. It's just earthen. It's the raw material of life and the cosmos. And so if you look at like how it all came, and I've gone down a little bit of a rabbit hole with it, and it's easy to get like, but what's beautiful now is that we get to look at, how is this still happening? Putting history in a perspective, its reverent place or its rightful place. How is this being perpetuated now? How am I, or have I been complicit in that subordination of my own body, my own sexuality, my own divine knowing, if you will, or sacred embodiment? That to me is everything. And when you wake into that, it's just like, oh my gosh, I was part of the problem and I didn't know. And there's no shame in that. It's just like, well, what do we do now?
Exactly.
And that's where you're at.
Exactly. That's such a great segue, because it's exactly what, when I woke up and I discovered the power of this. And honestly, at first it was such a reverent, beautiful experience. I cried. Oh, I cried in that moment. I cried for the loss for that young girl that thought she was permanently broken. But then I cried for this woman who finally could wake up and live life in a much different way the last half of her life. And I was experiencing such joy. that I decided that at first, I want to just keep it in my heart. It was so reverent and so beautiful and so special and sacred. I didn't share it except for just with my very, very dearest friends. And then I was emceeing an event and I felt very impressed. It was a smaller event. It probably had maybe 40-ish, 50-ish people. I felt impressed to share it. And I've never seen so many people go at the front of their chair and lean into me. And then I had so many people. I had a line of people waiting in the break to talk to me about it. It had made an impact in their life. And so as I was starting this book not too long ago, every chapter starts with a powerful story of how I learned that principle and that truth. And I felt impressed to share this story in one of the chapters. And then it unfolded before my eyes that I was to make a video. And this was the video that I was going to be making. And I had no idea why until I saw it. And I went, the Me Too movement was beautiful. It was awareness. We got to see the impact that
it awakens the grief of it and the anger.
Yes. And it was like, are you kidding me? And it allowed us to boldly say, yep, me too, and I believe anytime you bring your shame out to the light, it can't withstand that light anymore. It will be dismantled. It will burn. It will become those ashes that will help rise that phoenix, right? So the bottom line is that Me Too was necessary and beautiful and amazing, but we're more than Me Too. We're more than
what happened to us.
Absolutely. Amen to that. So the next level of healing for us women is time to heal. Time to heal. Time number 2, heal. And that's really where I wanted to go with this. I was willing to share this story. Believe me, I didn't want to share with the world that I didn't have an orgasm.
I was like applauding you and like, ooh, Wendy, go. Like, I love it. That's my point. I'm so inspired by women who are just like, you know what? Hey, let's destigmatize what it means to really be connected to yourself. And again, we're not talking about sex.
No,
it's not that.
Yeah.
And it's not just a one-off pleasure kind of thing. It's full embodiment, full reclamation, womb healing. Here I am, heart connection, the whole thing.
It's returning to our essence and remembering who we are. It's a buzzword, awakening, but it really is a good word. We are awakening and remembering who we always were, but we've been told and programmed that we aren't enough, that we weren't good enough, that we never get it right, that we make bad decisions, that blah, 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 blah. The stories go on and on and on until we realize that those were all lies. And when we get back to our truth and we understand who we are, then we awaken to this different way of being and showing up in this world. And when we are our highest and best and we start to heal, we give permission to everybody else around us to heal. The men are not, I never want us to be women power. It's women that heal in love. Invite our men to share in that. And there's nothing more beautiful for a man than to see the woman he loves rise and be able to become the best version. He feels such joy and wonderful connection with a woman who knows who they are. And by having that, it invites them to start visiting their own trauma story, to start visiting their own shame story. And then the children and grandchildren that are around us see an example of what it really looks like to be fully embodied in who you are. And now we show the new generation what to do. So it's no more Me Too. It's time to heal. It's time to rise up above that and start with something. I don't care what it is. Take the first step and do something. And so that's what.
Yeah, I want to walk back that first step a little bit, because I like to play devil's advocate a little bit because of my own past programming. There might be some women listening to this who are very religious or who follow a strict moral code in terms of, bad, right, wrong, good. And I totally respect that. And I know you do too.
Oh, 100%.
And at the same time, again, like, it's not female friendly in most religious settings in terms of what we're talking about, the fully embodied goddess and, the denigration of the body. The body being the enemy, the body being the temptation vehicle. So what would you say to a woman who maybe she's feeling like, okay, well, I want this to be okay, but I've got to go run it past my template. Again, very sacred to that person. It's not like, but what would you say to a woman who's sort of sitting on that, writing that line of like, I'm not sure how to embrace my sexuality. I'm not sure if I should, because isn't that why we're here on earth, to be tested, to not give in to all the earthly pleasures and desires and appetites of the flesh? So that's my devil's advocate moment.
Okay. You're great. And I want listeners to understand, I didn't arrive at this point when I was first when I was stuck in my shame and my trauma story and my body was starting to wail and scream. No way would I have been ready to go and do what I did at the very final finale of my healing. It started with feeling safe. It started to be back in my body. It started with, like, if all you can do, I have a very dear person in my life who is so depressed that she can't brush her hair. She can't wash her dishes. She can't do any of those things. And my suggestion was to her, go stand barefoot in the grass. Mm. Start with that. Once a day, go out and stand in the grass. See the sunlight. I mean, in more elaborate terms, and I didn't say this to her because she wasn't ready to hear it. Let Mother Earth embrace you in all of her goodness and all of her grace, and you will feel that energy and you will start to feel alive again. You've closed your heart so rock solid that you have no energy anymore. You have no passion and you have no light coming into that heart space. So just literally doing that, and then maybe visit breath. Rather being conscious about putting that breath in your stomach area, in your abdomen, and that diaphragm instead of your chest, and teaching your nervous system, I'm safe. I'm going to breathe in my abdomen, and I'm going to breathe, just consciously, several times a day, a breath, that 4 square breathing where we breathe in for 4, we hold for 4, we exhale for 4, we hold for 4. And doing that several times a day to start helping the nervous system get back into a place of balance. Because of our nervous system, these are the 3 things that I always start with. We need to feel safe. And some of you are like, well, I feel safe. Well, let's talk about fight and flight here for you. Are you trying to control your world? Are you always busy? Are you always worried about everybody else's happiness and not your own? Are you freezing? Are you exhausted, overwhelmed, frustrated? Probably in a trauma pattern, because that's what we do. And we just think that it's normal because everybody does it. Well, it's normal.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. What's coming to me is just, it's this incessant people pleasing,
Yes.
wearing yourself out for service to others being the highest ideal. When you redirect that energy of giving and put it into a receiving cycle, then everything changes. So where I was kind of going with you with that whole, the shame patterns that we're often programmed with in our culture and religions and family systems, schools, et cetera. It's almost like you have to give yourself permission to allow yourself to feel and to not have the mind directing everything, like the talk. When you think about intimacy, what have you been told versus what is wanting to emerge? And this is where people get blocked because they're like, there's sin, there's this is wrong, this is bad, this is, when I say this, I mean intimacy framed in any way. Yeah. Most people don't know how to differentiate and not feel guilty for any kind of intimate sexual exchange, whether they're married or not, because of that good girl programming.
Yes. Yeah.
And you almost have to give yourself that permission to
I do. Remember, you have all the answers inside. And a lot of us have been so disconnected to our bodies, we forget how to get that answer. And my suggestion is to just start and learn what a yes feels like in your body. Say yes over and over and over. Does it feel expansive? Does it feel light? Does it feel peace? What does that feel like? And then what does a no feel like? Does it feel contractive or constrictive? Does it feel heavy? Then you'll kind of start to understand how your body responds to those, right? And what kinds of things come up for you when you say a truthful statement versus an incorrect statement. And then when you start to say, what is it a good idea for me to explore my body? Then when your heart expands and you feel light and you feel peaceful and
the fruits of the spirit,
ready. Really? What's that?
The fruits of the spirit that you're feeling.
Yes. Then you can be rest assured that it's okay. And then when you go into that practice, just remember you are doing that out of love. You are doing that out of understanding and coming back to this body that the world has told you to hate. And you get to explore and go, what feels good? What doesn't feel good? And you'll probably, at least in my experience, even after that first initial encounter, I had the programming as well. And so the guilt still comes up a bit. And I remember just asking to see that guilt and that shame be brought out into the light and dismantle what I knew was a lie. It was a lie. That was absolutely a lie. And the more I am connected with my body, mind, and spirit, the more I am fully alive and fully illuminated in my own essence. And that was even how the name of my brand was born. So I just encourage you to start somewhere, whether that is addressing your trauma patterns and doing something to move towards dismantling the trauma, or it is actually you're at a place where you want to discover what your body feels like. And I would say, you know what, sister, you follow your heart and stop listening to the external world and the clutter and the chaos, because that's what it is, and start listening to that internal peace and understanding and knowing that you have it. You just can't remember it.
Preach. Woo.
Yeah. Hallelujah.
I love it. So Wendy, you've got something really special. I watched your video with you and I teared up multiple times. It's very well done. I know on September 11th, you have something coming up really, really special, really tender. And I'd love for you to share with our listeners how they can be part of that and get this out, get this video out for people to see your story.
Well, just like the Me Too movement, right? That just kind of just erupted all over the world. And it was so beautiful to watch that happen. And now it's time for the Time to Heal movement to erupt. And so I would love for you to be a part of that. The video that I am launching on September 11th is the very story you just heard, but in a visual way with my voiceover, with music.
Beautiful music. Yeah.
Oh, you know what? And when you watch it, I want you all to know that, yes, I was a part of that, but there was a much higher force that was involved in the making of this movie, in this film. It's 7 minutes long. And what you can do is literally just get involved in spreading this. What we're going to do, if you are interested and this resonates with you and you want to help this call to action to be erupt like a global roar into the world, then this is what you can do. You can simply go, I believe we're going to do a link to the Time to Heal here in the show notes.
The landing page where people can get the steps.
Right. And it's as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1, watch the video. You get a sneak preview, just you. Get a sneak preview to watch it before September 11th. And then number 2, invite 5 to 10 friends that you think resonate with this as well, or might be impacted on a positive level. Share it with them. And then number 3, we're going to jump on a Zoom call.
But we need to say, don't share it publicly, like in a post. Yes. Don't share the video at large. Just private message the video to people that you,
Yes, just private message the landing page to them, and then it'll tell them exactly what to do. Then number 3, on September 11th at 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. We're all going to gather together, and I will just give you little instructions. Hey, here's the link. Go ahead and start making your comments of how you felt when you saw this video. And at 11:11, we're going to launch it into cyberspace together. So that's what you can be involved in. Super simple, super easy, and it could have a profound impact on someone you love that needs to see this message and needs to get permission to heal. And that's what it's all about.
I love it. Well, and I know your intention behind this is just to create a movement. It's to literally help with this awakening process, to reclaiming feminine sexuality, and to be vulnerable about trauma, and to let women know they're not alone, just like the Me Too movement did. But it was very like Harvey Weinstein-y, and, not that it wasn't powerful. But we're talking, it was like, this is more, this is more like grassroots, like about the individual woman, which I love, and it's hopeful. It's a message of hope. And I have to say the video is very, very well done. That little movie is really powerful. So, kind of what I was thinking when I was watching it is there's probably a lot of women and men, but especially women who've had sexual trauma, who just they can't go there. They've, like you mentioned, tucked it away inside a part of you where your body now was trying to alert you to this and kick and scream because you couldn't or wouldn't allow that. But it's always about timing, right?
It is.
There's a readiness to that. Yeah. So I think that your movement will help create readiness for a lot of women to have that, like, joining arms kind of energetically, and being that it's, we have beautiful platforms now with the internet, just to be able to get that megaphone out there and just send it. Yeah. And obviously I know her. She's my friend.
I've been doing that for years about you, Cherie. I know Cherie Burton. She's one of my friends, So, and that's where we're going. I think that there's just going to be so many women rising to the best version of themselves here. I think we're already starting to see it, and we're like, wow, this is so cool. And we're uniting, we're linking arms, we're lifting each other up. And we invite you, if you're listening, we want you to be a part of this. Link arms. Let's unite. Let's rise together. Let's create a different world.
It's time to heal.
World.
Like the name of it is perfect. It's time to heal. It's time. And now you have the support and tools you need, and it's time. Well, thank you, my friend. This was really inspiring. I got chill bumps a lot while we were talking. And that's how I know. This is reaching someone somewhere, and their soul is like, thank you in advance. So thank you for your time today. And we'll have all those links in the show notes for our listeners.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Cherie. And you have a great day. And out there, have a great day. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening, and please join our movement on September 11th at 11 a.m. U.S. Mountain Time. Go to that link in the show notes or on the social media post. Follow those 3 steps. Watch the video. All of this is totally free. It's meant to build energy and momentum for a declaration, which is one of the steps of creation, to speak out. It's time to heal. And when women do that collectively and join voices and forces, miracles happen. This is how we're going to change the world, is this feminine rising for this embodied way of being and claiming and saying it's time to heal. So you can find those links in the show notes. Healing begins with choosing to heal. And that includes landing in your body, which for some of us has felt unsafe, but it's up to us to create that safety. If these conversations and watching the video and talking about these things bring some stuff up for you, as it did me, in a most powerful way, and I had readiness, I was ready, I had been in my body and I was ready for it. We still need a team, and we need tribes, we need each other. Sometimes you need professional support with a trusted facilitator. There are many tools of the earth that allow you to ground and activate. But creating safety is not about trying to control your world. If you're feeling exhausted and frustrated and overwhelmed, you do need to reach out. And it's not always just stress. You're probably in a trauma pattern. It's not about finding the next worthy project or service or whatever you can do. It's about finally putting your own healing and happiness over everyone else's. Thank you for showing up for yourself to heal, because even listening to something like this demonstrates a readiness on your part to move past those lower frequency emotions to find, getting out of that fight, flight, or freeze and really, really finding home within yourself. Have a beautiful, glorious week, and we'll talk to you next time on Women Seeking Wholeness.